Good evening, fam. Tonight, I want to talk about DCC. And what, for me, my experience with DCC is it's more like Area 51, alien technology stuff. You know, it's a conspiracy. It's a cover-up. That's how it feels. It's not really like that, but that's how it feels at times. You know, I have a lot of questions, and when I go on the forums to read, okay, how do I fix this? You know, some speed matching stuff. You know, you can go on on videos. You can watch 3 or 4 videos on speed matching, and each one is different. They're different from the last. So you can do speed matching through the speed tables, or you can use a simple speed table, or you can adjust this, and and you got the one guy who's like, when you're doing speed matching, one thing you want to do is change CV78 to 42, and that'll get you this. And it's like, dude, that's too much. The thing, I think, what most people want is, well, like me, I like DCC for what it can do. It makes, running locos on the same track independently, it makes running your trains a lot more fun. The sound is a great experience too. It just adds this new dimension of running your trains. That's great. But like most people, I don't want to get under the hood as that much. I only want to do what I really need to do. And I'll give you an example. There's a saying at Tesla, the auto power, AI company. There's a saying that goes like this: the best process is no process. The best part or component is no part or component. And what that means is the more you keep it simple, the more efficient and cost effective and higher quality it is. And it's the same with DCC. And I think another thing I've noticed about DCC, it's got so many options and variables. I mean, it's like walking into Costco and looking for coffee, and you got 50 different choices of coffee. You go to your local grocery store. I need toilet paper. You got 30 different choices of toilet paper. Again, there's so many options. There's so many little things that you can fine tune, which is great. But for me and most people, I don't want it. The less I can get under the hood of DCC, the better it is. I know enough to how to tweak some acceleration and do some basic speed matching. That's about the most I want to know. A few things I wanted to share. I was looking at one of my Economy, a third logos with an Economy decoder. And it sounds kind of flat, but it is an Economy decoder. So I went into JMRI and I looked at the equalizer page. And I did a read the CV, and all the values were just flat. So before I changed anything, I thought, what's a ballpark? What's kind of a basic thing I could do? And I first thought, I'll go on the forums and I'll ask there. And I thought, no, don't go to the forums, because you're going to ask this question and you're going to get 50 different answers from 50 different people. So I thought, well, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to Soundtracks directly. I emailed their tech support. I go, listen, I got this Economy. What gets me in the ballpark of good sound? And I was like, oh, I hope they just give me a basic one. No, they went into the complicated thing. Well, it depends on speaker size, and it depends on this, and all these different factors. Anyway, so what I did is I thought, what happens when I buy a car and I turn on the sound system, it sounds flat, or I rent a car, so I turn the sound system, it sounds flat. Well, I go to settings, I go to, the tone or volume or equalizer, and what do? What does everybody do? They crank up the treble, they leave the middle thing alone, nobody knows what that is anyway, that's why nobody touches it, and they crank up the bass, okay? And you set those settings, and hey, it sounds really good. So I figured I'd do the same for my logo. So at first I went online, I looked at what are the basic settings for your home stereo or whatever equalizers, and they all follow the same path. It's a U, like that. It just follows a simple U pattern. Low frequencies are high frequencies are high. Again, that middle one that nobody knows, just leave that alone. So I did that. I went to, program my economy decoder, and I didn't notice any difference. But I thought, well, maybe it's because it's an economy and they really don't have that variability to adjust volume. So I took one of my Tsunami 2 locos, and I went and looked at the equalizer. In JMRI, I read all the values, and guess what? It was a U shape. Well, it was a little different. It was a U, and it had a little tweaking here at the higher frequencies, but basically it was a U shape. And I'm like, that's what most people want. Just get me in the ballpark. Here's some questions I have about DCC. Again, this goes into the whole Area 51 alien technology, voodoo, black magic stuff, Two people I like to watch on YouTube. You have Larry Puckett, the DCC guy.
Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy.
And then you got George from Soundtracks.
Hey guys, George Soundtracks here.
George and Larry, those are the big studs of DCC. That's why I watch them. That's what I like. That's where I get my information from. However, one thing they do, and I notice that everyone does, is they'll explain something. Okay, you want your logo to do this? Well, they start out with step 1, they go to step 2, they go to step 3, and then all of a sudden, step 4 through 8, they just pass over, and then they get to step 9 and 10, and there you do it. I'm going, time out, guys, time out. What happened in these steps here? It's not clear to me. I'll give you an example there. One thing I'm trying to do with my locos is when you put them on the track and you turn on the power, they always auto start. Like with the Tsunami 2s, you get that bell ringing and then it cranks up and then the motor runs. Well, what I'd like to do, and I think many people like to do, is I just want to put it on the track, powered up, doesn't do anything. And then when I press a certain function button, then it powers up. Well, I did find this. I found that in my Tsunami, Athearn Tsunami 2 decoders and also the Economy, that to shut down the prime mover, you press F27, okay? And to turn on the prime mover, you press F26 if it's shut down. And as a side note, if you're using F26, F27, change those buttons for temporary, meaning it's like your horn. Your horn button, F2, is set for temporary. So that means is when you press it, if it's not temporary, the horn's just going to keep blasting and then until you press it again. But if you keep it at temporary, you just press it, and as long as you press it, that's how long the horn is going to get. The same thing for F26 and 27. You want to shut down the loco, you press F27. You want to turn it back on, press F26. Okay, that works. But it's the beginning part. So I watched this video from Soundtracks, and then there's George, and he's like, okay, we get this question. People don't want the prime mover to start when the power starts. They want to turn it on independently. So I'm watching the video, and it starts out great. And then George goes, oh, okay, here, we're going to do this. I have a consist of locomotives, and then I press this, and I'm like, whoa, time out. You just took something that I wanted to learn from one loco, and it added a level of complexity, it being in a consist. See, this is what I like, and I think this is what the majority of people would like on any DCC explanation, especially videos. It's like that video from Soundtracks. And I like to see George go, okay, everybody, I got this brand new logo, okay? Here's what I'm going to do. This is what I do for each and every one of my locos. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. I don't want it to start up until I press a certain function button, et cetera, et cetera. And then that would be like a best practices for any DCC layout. So that's what George does. He gets the thing. He opens the box. Step 1, I look at the loco to make sure it's not broke. Okay. Step 2, I put it on the programming track. Okay. And if you want to know what a programming track is all about, check out the video below, link in the description below. Okay. Step 3, I turn the power on to the programming track. Then I verify that the prime mover starts. You get that ringing bell that they have. And then it starts. Okay, I verified it starts. Now we're going to go do the programming. Step 6, step 7, I change this to that, change this to that. But what happened in that video is, all it went to is, well, you changed CV114. And I'm like, really? And then it was like really quick. It showed like you change it to 0 or 1. So what I did is I went in and put my, see right here, my SDP45, a third Genesis with a Tsunami 2. I put that in and I read that CV114. I think it was a value of 103. And I said, I got a bad feeling if I change this from 103 to 1 or 0, I forget what it is, that's going to screw some things up. So I said, I better not do that. So my next option was I went back into JMRI and I looked, and there was this one option under the sound page. It said, I think it said delay, disable auto turn on or something like that. Disable auto turn on. So I went to the JMRI forums or the Facebook page and I said, okay, here's what I'm trying to do. I don't want the loco to start up when I turn on the power. I want to be able to do it by pressing F27. And it said, can I use this disable or enable, disable the auto startup? And people were like, yes, that's how you do it. That's what I want to know. Keep it simple, stupid. Okay. So that's kind of, I felt I had a victory there. I haven't done it yet. I'm going to try it a little later. I'll let you know how that goes. Next thing that I have a question about. Again, this goes back to Area 51, alien technology. For example, I've seen this. I think Larry Puckett say this. When you order a decoder from, let's say, Yankee Dabbler or Tony's Trains Exchange, ask them to program your decoder to the type of loco you have. And my first thought is, why can't I do that myself? What is it that Yankee Dabbler or Tony's Train Exchange is doing that I can't do? Is it, I guess, is this some secret sauce proprietary information? I don't think so. But I know when you go to ESU to program to get sound files for their loc sound decoders, loc 5, you can download these kind of basic generic sound files, which will get you in the ballpark. And then from there you can do your tweaking. And so this was a thought that came to me, and I, because I had some trouble with my Scale Trains SD40T-2, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, why can't I just go to, let's say, the Scale Train site, and I have the SD40T-2, and I want to go back to original factory spec. Why can't I go to the Scale Train site, download whatever file I need to download, throw it into my ESU programmer, decoder programmer, click the right button, and then it takes it back to factory specs, original factory specs. In fact, what I would need to do, again, is just reprogram in the loco ID. Why can't I do that? Because the thing, like, for example, with Scale Trains, they have very specific function mapping to very specific lighting functions. For example, you have F5 is the class light. You press F5 once, you get a white light. You press it again, you get green. Then you press it again, you get red. And you press it again, turns it off. Another thing that Scale Trains does with their Southern Pacific locos, and this is different than what Walthers does with their Southern Pacific locos. Now with Scale Trains, if you turn on the, I think it's called HUD, the emergency red light, when you turn that on, it starts blinking, it starts oscillating, but the main lights turn off, your headlights and the SP gyro light. Those turn off, and then you turn off the red warning light, the main headlights go back on. But if you have a Walthers, like my Southern Pacific GP35, if you turn on the red warning light, the lights stay on. So there's specific function mapping. And what I like to see, and what makes sense to me, and I don't know why this can't be done, why can't you just go to the manufacturer site, download the file, and if you change too many CVs, you want to get back to factory default, you go down, download the file, and then it just reprograms it. Same with the soundtracks files. Let's say I have my SDP45 and I changed too many CVs or whatever, and I want it back to normal. So I could go to the Athern website, download the decoder programmer for the Tsunami 2, download all the values. I don't know, maybe it's a CSV value, you throw it into JMRI and then you hit write all changes on sheet. Or maybe you can go through and you look at the spreadsheet and you change all the CVs, back to get you to factory spec. Why can't I do that? Why aren't these files available? I mean, ESU makes their generic files available, but then you got to do, again, a bunch of light function mapping. Again, why is this secret sauce? Why isn't this just like, oh, I can download this, let me go back to factory specs? Now I know what some of you are saying. Well, if you want to go back to factory specs, for soundtracks, you want to change CV8 to 0 or 8. I can't remember. Okay, here's the thing. Let's say I do that with my soundtracks decoders. I change CV8 and I take it back to factory specs. Now, is that soundtracks factory specs, or does it take me back to Athern factory specs? The reason is, if it takes you back to Tsunami 2 soundtracks factory specs, then you're going to have to go in and change different CVs and variables to get the right horn, to get the right prime mover sound and other sound things and different function mapping. To me, what would be easier, again, is just have this. If you go to the SDP45 page, you have a Southern Pacific, you download this file. Then, or if you have a Burlington Northern, you download that file. And I know what you're thinking. Well, that's a lot of files. Well, they have those files. They developed those files already. They're there. So that's my other question. Why is this so hard? Why can't we just, download a file, reset your program, reset your decoder, and you're set? Okay, here's my next question. Speed matching. This is like, again, speed matching, voodoo, black magic, secret sauce stuff. You go on YouTube and you find various videos of speed matching. Each video shows you a different way to do it. Some people use the simple speed table, the V start, V min, and V max. Other people, they use the whole speed table, with all the different values. And then, everybody's got a different approach to it. And this is what I'd like to see. I don't see why this couldn't be done. Why doesn't the NMRA develop a spec, get all the big DCC gurus together and develop a spec where you have a type 1 speed acceleration profile, a type 2 speed acceleration profile, and a type 3. And a type 1 would be, and I'll use for an example, my scale trains locos. They're awesome. You give it gas, you give it throttle, and then the engine kind of winds up and there's kind of a 5-second lag and then it starts to take off. Very prototypical, sounds great, awesome. But my soundtracks don't do that. You know what I do find about the soundtracks decoders? When speed match, they're pretty much there. I can run my Tsunami 2 and a Econami, and they're really dialed in. They're pretty dialed in. So all you got to do is a little bit of tweaking. Now, however, the scale trains locos, their profiles are different. Again, there's a lot of lag, there's a lot of momentum, which really looks cool. But I also found this. I have an SD45 from Scale Trains, and I also have the SD40T-2. Their acceleration profiles are different. And in a couple months, I'm going to be getting the SD45X. So I'll be interested to see what the acceleration profile is for that, how much momentum there is, how much lag and deceleration, all that kind of stuff. So I'll be interested to see that. But what I'd like to see the NMRA have is a type 1, 2, or 3 speed profile or acceleration profile. And here's the thing. If you want these, each manufacturer, like say, for example, they have the spec. Soundtracks looks at it and goes, okay, to meet these requirements of the specs, we're going to adjust these CVs to do these values, okay? And then it meets that requirement. And if you want a speed 1, 2, or 3 profile, you make the changes that Soundtracks recommends, okay? Now, let's say you have a Scaletrains loco and with the Loc 5 programmer. Well, they figure it out, they look at the specs, they make all the adjustments they need to their CVs, and then you get that type 1, 2, or 3. Which would make it even great is if you could go, since they use Loc 5 decoders, and if you have, let's say, an ESU decoder programmer, you could go in that ESU programmer and you could select, you know what, I want a type 1 profile, acceleration profile. You click that, you hit right to the decoder, and then you get that type 1 profile. And, you know, the way I see it, like a type 1 would be super momentum, a lot of lag, really prototypical. And that kind of profile would be great for a very large layout where you have the room to have, you know, this slower acceleration and this more slower deceleration. A type 2 profile would be more better suited for a small to medium sized layout where you don't really have as much room to take a longer time to slow down. And a type 3 profile would be very little momentum. It would, you know, start up smoothly and slow down smoothly. And something like that would be very ideal for a very small shelf switching layout because you don't have the room to take advantage of all those things. Now I know what you're saying, or some of you are saying, well, you know, they really couldn't do that because Scaletrains uses this kind of motor and there's a back EMF issue with here. But Thurn uses this type of motor in their locos, and then they have their own back EMF, and then there's a different... No. The spec is in hardware independent. You design to the spec. You don't have to change your hardware or anything. All you have is, here's the spec from NMRA, then you make the adjustments to meet the spec. You know, Loxound, they make the adjustments to meet the spec. Digitrax, they all have these profiles that you can program in. They won't come from the factory. You can't buy it from, let's say, a Thurn and get it with that type 1, 2, or 3 profile, but you can go download it from Soundtracks, either, I don't know, upload it into JMRI or just go through each value and see which ones are highlighted. You change and change that. You get a type 1, 2, or 3. Why can't we do that? And that would get everybody in the ballpark for speed matching. And I don't foresee anything like that happening because it will require a lot of collaboration between each manufacturer, and I don't know how open they are to doing that. But it's a suggestion. I'd like to see it, and I think that would make a lot of users who really don't want to get under the hood of DCC, make them happy because it gets you in the ballpark. Again, it's like that equalizer sound profile. That U-shape gets you in the ballpark. And then if you want to do some tweaking, you can do some tweaking. Now, like I said, my SD-P45 had some tweaking, and it sounds great. Now, here's the thing about model railroading. It's a wonderful hobby, and there are so many aspects of the hobby that you can get involved in. And another way to put it, you can go down the rabbit hole of so many different things in this hobby. For example, you could be really into scenery, and that's your thing. You love doing scenery. Okay, then even a subset of that, you could be the guy or the girl who love making trees. You make the most bitchin' trees anybody's ever seen. Bitchin' a 70s, 80s term. And then you got the people who are into track laying, and they're like, oh, I got my fast tracks jig. I hand lay all my turnouts using fast tracks. They love it. Then you got the electronics guys, and they're into like, I'm making a DCC++ system, and I'm using an Arduino for that. I'm also going to use an Arduino, combine that with JMRI to make my signals work. And there are people that just love that stuff. Okay, and then there's the DCC folks, the people who get into it. They love it. They get under that hood and they know everything. You change CV114 and then you change CV22 to 8 and you change CV96 to 54, and they love that stuff and they get into it. Most people, like me, I want to do the minimum possible. So for all of you who go down the rabbit hole of what you like, that's great. That's what makes the hobby great. I'm not going down the rabbit hole of DCC. I want it to be, it's great what it can do, but I want the least amount of tinkering with it. I know I'll have to tinkering with some speed matching, but I want to do the least amount of that. So those are my thoughts on DCC. Tell me what you think. I was using kind of my, oh, gee, you want to change CV42 to 55 and all. That's just kind of joking around. I'm not trying to be disparaging to anybody. But we're basically all nerds when you think about it in this hobby. You know, we really get into some things. But hey, like I said, what I want to hear from you guys is let me know what you think. Put it down in the comments below. Would love to hear what you think. Larry, George, if you guys are watching, I want to hear your thoughts. You know, another thing too, I wish I could have Larry Puckett and George from Soundtracks on speed dial, and I give them a call and say, hey, George, I want to try and do this thing, you know, this acceleration thing. What do I do? George is like, okay, change CV45 to 22 and change CV96 to 54. Oh, okay, cool. Or I get Larry on the phone. Larry, I got a question. And he tells me what to do. Okay, thanks, Larry. That's not going to happen, but I'd like it to happen. So anyway, again, that's all I got. Everybody have a great night. Talk to you later.